All right, everyone. Today on the Odd Tandem, we have a great guest, Dani Rowe. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
First of all, I have to say thank you for coming on because I know that you've been busy. What actually have you been up to this last month or so?
Well, I've been very, very busy. I got roped into being on the breakaway for the men's Tour de France. I say roped into. I was very excited to be part of it, but it was very last minute for me. Only about 10 days before the tour. So it was a bit of a jump into the deep end, but I absolutely loved it. It was such a privilege to be a part of. So that was 3 weeks, of course. And then I've just had a week at home back with the kids. It was the longest I'd ever been without them. And then to come back was another jump into the deep end. Actually, I forgot what motherhood was like for a few weeks. And that was just as hard, if not harder, to be honest. So yeah, I'm just enjoying a bit of downtime and actually off to Spain for a holiday tomorrow.
That is actually pretty cool that you have a little bit of a holiday and they don't get you in for the Vuelta as well. The 9 days.
Oh, they are.
Ah, okay.
They are.
There you go.
So I've actually got a week off now, and then I will jump into the women's Tour de France FAM, and then I'll go straight into the Vuelta. So another very busy period coming up. So I'm jumping on a plane, having a bit of a relax, and then it'll be bam, straight back into it.
And for our listeners and viewers, during my 9 days on a motorbike at the Tour de France, I had a British commentary in my ear, so I would know what's going on in the race. And I did hear Dani quite a few times, and believe me, she was just like a fish in the water. She was in her element, so I can only give her the highest compliments. She did actually fit in absolutely perfect. Just need to say that.
Thank you. That is very kind. I was very nervous coming into a very established team, but I've been commentating on women's racing for many years, and I've been part of the breakaway for Discovery and Eurosport on some of the men's classics as well. And obviously I follow it, very, very passionate about cycling. So yeah, I was nervous, but it went really well. I really enjoyed it. It was part of a great team. And thankfully they've asked me to come back, so I must have done an okay job.
Well, that's a fantastic intro into our little quick fire questions that we have for you today. So question number 1, do you prefer commentating or coaching?
Commentating.
Homecoming parade or the gold post box? And to our viewers and listeners that don't know what that means, maybe you can explain what the gold post box is actually.
Yeah, of course. So after London Olympics, so London 2012, they decided to paint every gold medalist a gold postbox. So we could choose which postbox was painted gold. They wanted it to be where we were born, but actually I was born in a city called Southampton in the south of the UK. But I'm from a little village just outside of Southampton called Hamble. So I asked if I could have my gold postbox painted there because it's where my parents live. I go back and visit a lot, and I do a little running route where I pass the gold postbox. It was only supposed to be painted gold for a year after the Olympics, and then they were going to paint it back red. But then they decided that now they're going to keep them gold forever, which I think is such a lovely touch because, you know, I get pictures of people that have come to visit the gold postbox and some friends if they're just walking past saying, oh, look where we are. And then when I go back, it just brings such a nice feeling when I run past it or, I don't know, walk past with the kids. So that's what happened. So all over the country, every gold medalist from London 2012 has a designated postbox that's been painted gold.
Okay, next question. Do you prefer track or road racing?
It's such a hard question. I'm going to go track.
Okay. And last one. Olympics or the Tour de France? Which is your favorite?
Olympics. I've never ridden the Tour de France, so I have to say Olympics if I'm talking about myself and riding.
Since you already touched on it with the gold post box, you are born in actually the correct word is Humble-le-Rise, correct? And that's
Correct.
just outside of Southampton or Portsmouth, right? 4,600.
Not Portsmouth. They're big rivals in the football, Jens.
Okay. So you depending to the Southampton side of that. Okay. And the British Channel is not too far from there. 4,600 inhabitants. So you would expect half of them are fishermen. How on earth do you become a cyclist in the first place?
Good question. I'm actually not from a fishing family. So my dad is a 2-time Winter Olympian in the sport of biathlon. He actually got roped into skiing. He was part of the British Army, and they asked him if he wanted to try out for skiing, and he thought it was fun downhill skiing, and it turned out to be cross-country skiing. He was pretty good at it, and then he was, part of the British team whilst being in the army. He went to 2 Olympic Games, 84 and 88, in Sarajevo and Calgary. Didn't medal, but was, held British records for a long time. Anyway, we never even knew, I'm talking we, as me and my sister. I've got a sister who's 2 years younger than me. We never knew. He never put anything around the house. We were just very, very sporty, a very active family. I took part in every single club you could imagine, from ballroom dancing to football, swimming, you name it, everything. I loved it. And then I was a keen swimmer and runner in school, but never gonna be an Olympian. Wasn't that talented, worked hard, loved it. British cycling came into my school when I was 14 and asked if anyone wanted to try out for the talent team, which was a talent identification program that they put in place to find talent. Initially, I did it to get out of a maths lesson because I love sport. And I got through the first round. It was just around the school playing field. They did an endurance test around the 400-meter track and a sprint test down the 100-meter track. And I got through that test. Then they brought in kind of watt bikes to test, obviously, different powers, measurements, a bit more scientific, of course. I got through that test. And then I got invited on a mountain bike ride, which now looking back, I think they did to test mental capacity, whether you were up for the challenge, whether you'd get stuck in. And then I got a letter home to say I'd made it onto the talent team. Were my parents, happy to support me? Because this could mean training camps throughout the year, racing, cycling, so being a taxi driver for me. And they said, yes, if you want to do it, we will support you 100%. And that was the start, really. So I was 14, very up and down. The British cycling have got a kind of pyramid system leading up to the Olympic program where you get selected for the Olympics. So I was on the talent team, and then I was okay. I was never that great. I just tried very, very hard. I wasn't winning from the start at all. But I loved it, and I just, I was a very hard worker. So initially I was an endurance rider, and that's my background, how, my dad was a biathlete. And then, I don't know if you remember Ian Dyer, who was the national sprint coach for a very long time for British cycling, said, oh, you should try out for the sprint squad because we think you're pretty good at sprinting. So I went on the Olympic development program for a year at sprinting, and I was shit. I got my head well and truly kicked in by Jess Varnish and Victoria Pendleton and Becky James, who are, Becky James is still one of my best friends, silver medalist from Rio, 2-time silver medalist from Rio Olympics. And then I said, this is not for me. So I was coached by Jan van Eyden, went over to Germany, again to Cottbus, European champs, got my head kicked in. Riders like Christina Vogel were there. I remember actually quite a funny story. Jan holding me up for the sprint, obviously 3 laps or maybe 2 at Cottbus because it was a longer track. And he said, Dani, your only chance of winning is if you go from the gun, which is obviously not really the thing to do in cycling. So I just went as fast as I could. But anyway, I got past probably with about 300 meters to go still. Then I got invited back onto the endurance squad, because when I was initially asked to go on the sprint, I said, okay, only if it doesn't work, you put me back on the endurance squad for a year. But I was crap because I'd only spent a year sprinting. And then I got kicked off the program then for 2 years. So they said, "Oh, you're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. You're chucked off the team." And then I went away from British cycling and found my own coach. And my parents were amazing and said, "Look, we'll support you as long as you want to do it." And so I kept going. Then I got glandular fever. So I couldn't ride for a long time. And I thought, I don't know if this is for me. And it was the first time I'd sort of had a wobble. But then when I got better, I had about 6 weeks to the national championships on the track. And my coach at the time said, "Let's put everything into this because this will be a big opportunity to compete against the girls who were already on the British cycling team." So I was training 3 times a day, trying to trick my body into thinking there was more days in the week. Just putting everything into it. Went to the nationals and I medalled in every event I rode. And I got an email from Paul Manning, who was the British coach for the Team Pursuit at the time. And he said, "Do you want to come to Manchester to try out for the Team Pursuit? This is the event that we've highlighted as being our, most likely gold medal in London Olympics." This was at the end of 2010. Went up to Manchester and started on this, I call it an X Factor elimination process, because there was 12 of us, 12 girls. I was the only one that wasn't on the team at the time. So came in and was driving myself up to Manchester. So it's about 4 hours from Southampton every week to do a couple of sessions. And then made the world's team in the March of 2011 when we won in Appledorn. And that was the start, to be honest. That was the kind of upward trajectory to the Olympics. After each major competition, someone was told, "That's it, you're off, you're not good enough," until there was 4 left for the Olympics. And then 3 of us rode all 3 rounds. So it was, that's a quick journey into my life as a cyclist. But I'm sure we'll get deeper.
A quick explanation for the viewers. Back then, women's teams pursuit was a team of 3. Now it is a team of 4. I don't know when it changed, but back then it was a team for 3 for the women's teams pursuit on the track, right?
Yes, 3 women, 3 kilometers. It changed in 2013 to become kind of parallel with the men. So it's now 4 women, 4 kilometers. But when I rode in the Olympics, it was 3 kilometers, 3 women. And it was myself, Laura Trott and Joanna Rousel that rode at the Olympic Games.
Well, there's so many things to unpack from your last answer. I always wondered, because Rod Ellingworth is a good friend of mine and is a mentor of mine. And he was one of the guys that ran that program to go to the schools and see the kids and to test the kids. And I didn't know that it was tiered like that into, you do one, and then if you pass that, you do another one and another one. So thank you for filling me in on that. I'm going to have to get him or you on again to basically do one whole episode asking about that, because it was so effective. I mean, it's difficult over here in the US to find that talent, but you guys definitely did it and continue to do it. So, you got stuck in for sure. I mean, it is brutal. Like, I was on the road side of British cycling a little bit when I worked at Sky, and I would just hear little rumors and, around when I would spend time up there in Manchester, of how mentally difficult the selection process was. Like,
that was the hardest bit. It really honestly was the hardest for me. And I was very lucky that I had supportive friends and family outside the bubble, because you've hit the nail on the head. It was absolutely brutal. And that was something that you would worry about every single day when you went into the track. Everything was scrutinized. And I think that's why they got the best out of us, but it was done in quite a brutal way. There was people on this journey told after a World Cup at the baggage carousel of the airport that was it. Their journey to the Olympics had ended, and then they weren't coming into the track on Monday morning for the track session. And you were always worrying about whether that was going to be you or not, even up to the Olympic final. So there was 4 of us that went to the holding camp, which was 2 weeks before the games. We were told a week before who was in round 1, the night before who was in round 2, and 30 minutes before the final who was riding the final. So not only are you trying to perform to the absolute pinnacle of your ability, but also in the back of your mind, you're thinking, am I going to get to the next round? Am I going to be in this final? Because, you know, they could just put someone else in, which is very different to most Olympians, because I guess injury or illness aside, someone should know a year before if they're going to be lining up in the Olympics, you know, at least 6 months before, not and 30 minutes before the Olympic final, because, you know, they're going to keep that from you, scrutinize the ride, look at the bar chart that they use to see who's slowing the team down, who's picking it up too much, and then tell you that you're in the final. It's brutal.
but that's what I mean. It was so that around the baggage carousel, hey, you're off the team sort of thing, were some of the stories that I heard. But you just told us that you actually got kicked off the team multiple times. And I know the people at British Cycling, like once their head is made up, you know, once their decision is made, I mean, how did you get back into the selection? Like, other than performing, I mean, mentally going through that multiple times and then coming out the other side eventually, and we'll get into this later, with some amazing results, including the Olympic gold medal. But yeah, what was that like, and how did you get stuck in, as you said, and combat that?
It was awful. I remember getting the letter because you had to apply for the Olympic Development Program, which was, the Academy. So I was on the Olympic Development Program for sprint, then the Olympic Development Program for endurance, and then the next tier in the pyramid was the Academy. And I applied for 2 years, and I was told for 2 years in a row that I wasn't good enough. And I got
in those words.
You get a letter. Yeah, I mean, I was told that I wasn't good enough by a specific coach, but in the letter, it's a little bit nicer worded than that, I guess, you know. But ultimately, I think it was one coach that maybe didn't believe in me or didn't think I was good enough that had the power over whether I got on to the next level or not. And I think I was so young still. I was only maybe 16, 17.
That is young.
So still pretty young. And I loved what I was doing. I'd always dreamt of being an Olympic and world champion. I didn't care what sport it was in. I didn't come from a cycling background, so I was never a passionate bike rider, but I loved competition. I loved elite sport. I got goosebumps watching anything because I felt that I don't know, I just loved pushing myself and that feeling of success. So when I was told I wasn't good enough, I remember crying for days on end, and my parents, again, were the best thing in this journey because they just kept me believing. I never really believed in myself. Throughout my whole career, I didn't really believe in myself. I always had to be picked up a lot. But I guess there was something innate that just kept me going. And it's really hard to put into words what that is. I think maybe as a parent, you would know more because my dad especially always knew there was something in me. I think you can kind of see it in kids, whether they've got that internal motivation to keep going when people tell you you're not good enough. I remember when I used to swim, something that sticks with me is that we used to have to get up really, really early for swimming sessions before school. And my parents said, if you wake us up, we will take you. So I had to set my alarm and wake my parents up, and they would take me. So it never came from them. It was always from me because I wanted to do it. And I think now as a parent myself, I think, wow, that's actually really powerful because you hear about kids living through the parents type thing. It's their parents' dream. It's not their kids' dream. And the parents want them to do it more than they want to do it themselves. But that was never the case with me. I always wanted to do it. And I don't really know why. I can't really answer that question. And I think going back to your question, Bobby, it's more that that was just a drive inside me that kept me going. And I had the support from my parents who would help me find a coach. And I just kept training. And then I went to those national championships, did well. And then it was a different coach, Paul Manning, who I had a very good relationship with, that obviously saw the talent in me and maybe the hard work that I would have had to have done not being on the team to get to that point. And then that was it.
So don't want to go too much into it, but it sounds like either you got to be mentally extremely strong to work under the pressure, or to take the decision, the news that you out, or you got to have a really good support network, right? Like close friends or a partner, or having your parents on your side, your siblings. Otherwise, if you're 17, you got told, actually, no, you're not good enough. Maybe nicer words in the letter. That's hard to take, right?
Really hard. 100%. If it wasn't for them, it wasn't for... So my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, his dad was actually coaching me. So it's Luke Rowe. So my husband is Luke Rowe's brother. Luke Rowe's dad, who's been a coach for many, many, many years, was coaching me at the time. And they all just stuck, got behind me, kind of stuck together, kept supporting me. I kept riding, obviously. But if it wasn't for them, there's no way I would have kept on. I would have listened to them and thought, I'm not going to be good enough. Maybe I'd have tried another sport. And I think, that is half the battle, especially with young kids. It's so much about the support network. Otherwise, it would be so easy to just give up, because you need those parents to drive you up and down the country. You need your coach to still believe in you and say, okay, that person's told you you're not good enough, but we still believe. And if you're still enjoying it, then let's crack on and see what we can do.
Wow. Yeah. You absolutely hit that on the head. I mean, you have to have that support around you. But so we've talked about the pressure surrounding the 212 Olympic Games. Let's hear about your positive memories of the games. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, and we know that the pressure is there, but tell us some of the good stuff.
Oh, where do I start? It was incredible. Everything about it, it was my dream, and to be at a home Olympic Games was just amazing. I remember pressure, but good pressure, because we were flying at the time. We actually broke 6 consecutive world records with the 3 in London as well. So we'd broken 3 beforehand, and then we broke 3 in each round of the Olympic Games. But I was sharing a room in the holding camp with Laura Kenny. She was Laura Trott at the time, and we got a newspaper through the door of the hotel, and it had something like most likely gold medals of the London Olympics, and we were number 1. And we said, oh my goodness, they're hanging this medal around our necks before we've got on the track, But we worked with Professor Steve Peters, the psychiatrist, and he was amazing, still is amazing. I will sing him up all day long. I still speak to him now when I'm having a wobble about motherhood, because I'm a big worrier and I worry about everything. But he was so instrumental to so many of our performances, because there was that pressure on us. But we just had the best time. I was only, 21. So I was so young at the Olympics, and it was just one big party, really, from, the moment we got there, and we had all of our kit, GB kit, and went to the Olympic Village, and you saw all these superstars from other teams, and it was just the best feeling. And although we were nervous, we knew we were flying, because we'd ridden a world record in training before we got to the Olympics. And then, in terms of the racing, it all went perfectly. We rode 3 world records. We nearly caught America in the final. And then after the games was where I could really, really enjoy it, because obviously leading up to the race, that's all you're thinking about. And you don't really let yourself think that it's the Olympics. And that's what Steve Peters helped us do. This was just another race. This is what we have been doing day in, day out. You had to just control the controllables, what we were in control of, and that was going as fast as we could on a bike around a wooden bowl. And that's how he would put it into perspective for us. But after, it was just, we were like superstars. Sir Paul McCartney was stood in the crowd. He got the whole crowd singing Hey Jude, stood on the podium. I remember thinking, I need to soak this in as much as I can, because this moment's going to be gone so quickly. But oh my goodness, this is just amazing. All my dreams had come true. You know, I dreamt of being world and Olympic champion. I became world champion in 2011. 2012 again, and then this was the Olympics, and my family and friends were there, and then we just partied, you know, and we got to do some amazing things after the games, from meeting very, very famous people, going out nightclubbing every single night, going on holidays. Yeah, it was just a whirlwind, and something that I'll never forget.
And wasn't it that moment or the day you won your medal, wasn't it like these golden afternoon of British sports or something? Please explain that a little more to our listeners.
Sure, yeah. So it was the 4th of August, 2012, and it was deemed Super Saturday by the British media because it was the day that Great Britain won 6 gold medals. So, you're going to have, this will test me now. I knew there was 3 in athletics. So it was Mo Farah, Jessica Ennis and Greg Rutherford, us on the track. And then I believe there were 2 in the rowing leg. But yeah, don't quote me on that.
You got all of them. Our producer is from the UK, and he put this all down. So nice memory there. Nice memory there.
Yeah, so that was Super Saturday. So yeah, it was just unbelievable. I remember, you know, getting back to the room and my phone had gone crazy, and just the opportunities we got after were, yeah, it's really even hard to put it into words. It just gave me goosebumps, and we felt like we were just living on a cloud for, well, not that long, because we had to do a World Cup in Glasgow in October, and it was hell. I got dropped, and it was the worst team pursuit I've ever done in my life. If you've ever done team pursuit, it's the best when you're going well, and the worst if you're not, because you stand out like a sore thumb. And obviously you can't lose someone when there's 3 riders. So now with 4, you can lose a rider, but back then you couldn't. So you just had to hang on as long as possible. And I was just flapping off the back for about the last kilometer.
Here's my little experience with that. I was, I believe, 16 German championships, 4 kilometers. I mean, I still had like these points race style bike with flat spokes. We didn't have disc. I mean, I'm talking 1986 maybe. And so I was the 3rd spare. So the first guy flopped. The spare guy went, oh, I feel sick. The next spare guy, oh, but no. And then it came to me. I was not even in the picture. I really said, okay, Jens, listen, we need 2 pulls. 2 pulls. It was actually in Cottbus, the track you talked about, the 330-meter concrete. And I said, look, Jens, we want 3 pulls. And then you go up and you scream on top of your lungs, 3 men left. So, okay, 2 pulls, I can do this. Yeah, so I started last position, and I did my 2 pulls, and I went, 3 men left. And then we won a bronze medal. So that's how I actually had a bronze medal at the junior championships. But the other ones were absolute legends. But I just jumped in like because nobody else wanted to. And I know what you mean. It is terrible if you're not in shape, or if your technique is not good and you're afraid when you come down, you're too close to touch the wheel or too far off, so you have to sprint to catch it. There's so many things that can go wrong. I know.
Yeah, there are.
So the team pursuit was obviously your jam. And, you know, you, like you said, won the world championships in 2011, the Olympics in 2012, the Worlds up to 2012 and 2013. So, you know, you were in the know of everything that was going on, you know, the gears and whatnot. I know it's what, 3 Olympic cycles later, And it sounds like you're still kind of attached to UK cycling, the track program, and as a commentator. How have you seen the sport of women's team pursuit change from when you won the Olympic gold in 2012 until now, for example? I don't know, gears, equipment, pacing, times. How has it changed?
Yeah, it's changed quite a lot. The gears are a lot bigger, even though we rode pretty big gears, but now even bigger because they're going faster. So already we were spinning at about 100. I think my average cadence in the Olympic final was about 122. It was so fast. And that was on, I think, something like 100.8-inch gear. I don't know what that would be, kind of chainring versus sprocket, but it was pretty big. But now a lot bigger. The positions have changed a lot. So if I look back at my position, it was awful. My head was right in the sky. Now, obviously, we've got a more head to hands position that you see on the road as well. So you've come up higher, but you've got your kind of frontal areas a lot smaller. And then in terms of pacing, I think they're using longer turns. So you're getting more rest than what we were when it was 3 kilometers. So you'll see riders doing longer turns up to sometimes 3 laps. I mean, I know Katie Archibald was an absolute machine, and unfortunately she's not going to the Olympics because she broke her leg only a couple of weeks ago, but she was doing monster turns in the British Team Pursuit squad. And it just enables everyone to have more rest and more recovery to be able to then give more on the front. But they're probably the biggest changes that I've seen. Technology will always change. So they've probably got a lot of faster equipment now, faster skin suits. Even though we did a lot of testing, we had specific skin suits made for us for the Olympics. We did do a little bit of wind tunnel work, but not a huge amount. And then, yeah, I mean, our bikes were great at the time, but even they will be getting faster and faster, which is what we're seeing on the track and on the road. All these records are being broken every year. So, yeah.
I'm sorry, Izzy. I just have one more follow-up question to that. So when you're on the front pulling in a team pursuit versus when you're 4th in the draft, what is the difference there? Like, what watt are you pulling to basically pace a team, and what watt do you have to sustain to recover?
Okay, I got to try and think back to what I used to do now. I believe when I was on the front of the Team Pursuit squad, I'd have been doing about 450 watts versus about 270, 280 in the line. Ooh. So quite a big difference.
Yeah.
And then off the start, I'd probably hit over 1,000 watts in the start because our start was fast. We used to come out quite hard. We had the 3 of us were fast. So myself, Laura, and Joanna. Joanna was in. So it was Laura. Where were we now? Laura, Mount 1, and then Joanna, and then myself at the games. So we'd just get off the mark pretty quick, and then just be able to sustain it, because it wouldn't take too much out of us. We were all, could sprint over 1,000 watts pretty easily.
You mentioned Katie Archibald. Do you have any news? Did she, for our listeners, she had a ticket for the Olympics. She was an important part of the British team, and she actually happened to fall over in her garden, and in this weird accident broke her leg in a terrible way, right? So did she needed surgery, and is she back on a bike or on recovery, or do you have any news about her?
I don't have any more news than anyone else who follows her on social media has. She could have won 3 gold medals. I'm not going to say quite easily, but she was looking very, very good for 3 golds for the Omnium, Madison, and the Team Pursuit on the track. And then, like you said, she had a freak accident in the garden, and I know no more than that really. Broke her leg in a couple of places, required surgery, and is now rehab, not back on the bike yet. The recent post I saw, I think she'd just come out of a cast. because she was saying how she'd lost so much muscle, you know, when it's in a cast. But I'm not sure exactly where she is now, but it's just heartbreaking for her. Obviously, you know, when you're so close to the Olympic Games in the shape she was in. I just, hope she's got a lot of support behind her, because I'd love to see her come back from it.
Over here in the US, you know, we don't know so much about track racing. You know, it's not super popular. Can you just give a short few word answer to explain the track events that are going to be in the Olympics this year? Starting off with the team pursuit.
Team pursuit, obviously 4 kilometers, 4 women or 4 men. And it's what it says on the tin. You just share the workload, try and get from A to B as quickly as you can. So 16 laps around the track. And the time is taken on the 3rd rider that crosses the line.
Okay, this is one that I kind of understand, but maybe you could shed a little bit more light on it. The team sprint.
Yeah, so team sprint, again, is a sprint event. So as quick as you can go for 3 laps, but one rider will pull off each time. So you start with 3, then the front rider will lead off, 2 riders slot in behind, he'll go as fast as he can or she'll go as fast as she can, swings off, let the other 2 riders through, they will then do another lap, the front rider swings off, and that will leave that one rider left to do that last lap. And again, it's the fastest team that wins.
Okay, how about the Kieran? I've seen this before and I still don't really understand it.
Okay, so the Kieran, it's the one with the funny bike. I always try and how I explain it. So there's like a motorbike that gets the riders up to speed, that swings off with 2.5 laps to go, I believe. I wasn't a sprinter, so I didn't pay too much attention to it. And then they just fight it out then. So I think there's normally about, I want to say 6 or 8 riders in a final. And then it's just absolute carnage for 2.5 laps where they sprint behind the dirt, or the Dani, so the motorbike is pulled off, and then they give it hell for leather and see who crosses the line first. But it's all argy-bargy, and there's always crashes, and it's so fast, and I hate watching it because it makes me very nervous.
The way they explained it to me when I was young is Kieran is the event where place 3 and 5 crash and slide across the finish line. That's how they explained it to me, right? That basically backs up what you just said, right?
Yeah, it is exactly that. There's always crashes. There's always riders trying to get into gaps that aren't even there. And then it just ends in, I mean, it's amazing to watch, but I never enjoyed it when I did a little bit of sprinting myself. I just went from the gun and got caught. Hence why I got kicked off that program.
I think the sprint is pretty self-explanatory, so we won't have to go through that. But can you shed a little bit of light on the Omnium?
Yeah, so that's actually changed quite a lot since I was riding. There's 4 races in the Omnium now. So there's a scratch race, individual pursuit, elimination race, and a points race. And that is then combined to the total. So your combined points then give you that overall score. So it's basically the best of a collection of different races.
And the Madison, we've seen this one. This one is kind of known in the US, but explain a little bit about the Madison.
Okay, so the Madison is the longest race, I think, maybe bar the points race. You're in teams of 2, and you're both riding around the track, but only one rider is in the race at a time. And it's almost like a relay race. When you reach your partner, you swing them in using your hand sling, and then they will take over, and you will rest then at the top of the track while they're racing around the bottom. And when they catch you again, they use the hand, sling you in, and again, there's loads of crashes. It's absolute carnage. You can hardly follow what's going on, but it's brilliant.
So if you wouldn't have done the team pursuit, if you weren't a team pursuit specialist, of those other Olympic events that we just talked about and you explained so well, which one would you go for if you couldn't pick the team pursuit?
Well, there was only the Team Pursuit and the Omnium that were available to us when we were riding as endurance riders. And I'd actually ridden a few Omniums. It was myself and Laura that were going for that spot at the Olympics. So I'd medalled in a few World Cups that I'd done in the Omnium. So I did enjoy that. But Laura was obviously Laura, so she got the spot. And then I enjoyed the Madison as well. So myself and Laura have been national Madison champions, and I loved it. So to be honest, all of them, I really like track racing. If I had to pick one, I'd probably go Madison, because I really like the thought of racing with someone else and being able to share that with someone else, like the Team Pursuit in a way. I really liked that collective goal, working together with other people to reach an end target. But I enjoyed the Omnium as well, so it's hard to answer.
In your last training camp, or last days, or no, maybe not days, but weeks before the World Championships, the Olympics, how would your training be looking like? I mean, you trained for an event that's like just a little more than 3 minutes, right? Or maybe 4.5 or 4 minutes nowadays. Is it just all anaerobic, max, and just suffer until you got like lactic acid like coming out of your ears? Or you actually do like some normal 3-hour like endurance rides as well? Or is it just all on the track and full gas?
No, so we did a pre-Olympic camp in Mallorca, and we used to do a lot of camps in Mallorca, and we would combine a lot of road training with our efforts. So we would just do general 3-hour rides. We didn't do a lot of riding without efforts. A lot of our rides had efforts. So I guess the easiest type of ride we would do if it wasn't a rest day would be like a zone 2 ride. So kind of just at that niggly type pace for a couple of hours. But we would also do a lot of efforts. So 2040s was a big one. I don't know if you know Mallorca, but there's a very famous climb, Sacalobra, and we used to have to do 2040s up there. So 20 seconds full gas as hard as you could, and then 40 seconds just basically to keep you upright, because on Sacalobra it's pretty steep. So to just keep moving, you still probably have to do, I was probably still having to do around, I don't know, at least 150, if not 200 watts, and then bam, go again. And we do kind of blocks of maybe like 10 minutes at a time, which was pretty tough. And then we would do a lot of split days as well. So we might do a 2-hour zone 2 ride in the morning, and then in the afternoon we'd go up and down the coast and do capacity efforts. So 3 minutes, trying to average as high power as you can. So not full gas from the off, but just to try and measure your effort throughout 3 minutes and try and have the highest average that you could. And that was really hard. So a lot of specific training, but we'd still probably be doing at least 15 hours on the road a week, I would say, but very specific to Team Pursuit efforts.
Well, that's a great transition, because obviously, again, you were doing a lot of road riding, a lot of training on the road, and you also raced a lot on the road. The Commonwealth Games, you did Flesh Wallone, you came to the Tour of California, you even did the race in Philadelphia, which was the biggest race in America back then. You did Strade Bianche, Tour Down Under, Giro d'Italia Feminine. I mean, you raced all over the world on the road. How was that experience after coming off such a successful career on the track and then getting to do all these different road races?
I actually love the road, and I raced quite a lot on the road before and whilst I was still training on the track. So I actually got I medaled in the under-23 national championships back in, I think it was 2008. So I would have been 18, and then I got signed into Vision 1, which was Nicole Cook's team, and she won the Beijing road race, and one of Britain's most successful road women. And she had a team called Vision 1. So I did a lot of racing out in Belgium, when we went out and stayed in Italy for a training camp, did a few big races back then. So it was something that I always really enjoyed. So after the track and when I transferred onto the road, that's when I kind of really focused on it for a few years. And yeah, again, it was very, very different from the track. We were allowed to live where we wanted to live. So when I was on the track, we had to be based in Manchester with the British team. And if we were on the road, then we could be wherever we wanted, because it was, down to our road contracts and our road teams to be happy with where we were. I always stayed in the UK and then kind of flew out to races from there. But yeah, I love the road. I was okay at it, and if I'd carried on after 2018, when I stopped, I think I probably would have carried on doing better than I'd done in 2018, and I had a good year in 2018. But I just felt that I achieved everything and more that I ever dreamt of, and wanted to start a family.
Something not really cycling related when you hit the Commonwealth Games. For me, as an outside European, what is going on that sometimes you be England, sometimes you be the United Kingdom, and sometimes you're Great Britain? Well, what is all that about? Like, can you make it easy and break it down for me as a stupid continental European? Because how can you have 3 different nationalities for the Commonwealth Games, for Olympics, for whatever, the World Championships, and so on?
Oh God, don't ask me. I have no idea. I just do what I'm told. I mean, obviously Great Britain is made up of different countries, so England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales. So I actually live in Wales, but I'm English. But yeah, so in the Commonwealth Games you would compete as either England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales, and when it's the Olympics or the World Championships, it's Great Britain. So you would have athletes, English athletes, Welsh athletes, Scottish athletes that will all compete for Great Britain.
Thank you very much for clarifying that.
Great. Not just a pretty face there, Jensi. That was a great question. I think we all struggle with that one. This year in the Tour de France, Jonas Vingegaard had, he finished second in the Tour de France. I don't think he needs to be sad about that. But after his crash down in Pays Basque, he had a very similar injury that you suffered in 2014, which was a snapped rib cage and collapsed lung. You also spent 10 days in the hospital. Can you give us a little bit of info on the recovery back to full convalescence after that sort of injury? Because it had us all kind of scratching our heads this year watching him recover so fast and perform so well in the Tour.
Yeah, it was remarkable, to be honest, because I could somewhat relate to, what he had come back from. So I had a very bad accident, like you said, in 2014. I was out just with a local club run, a group of guys actually, and we were on our way back and it was raining, typical Wales, and there was a pothole that was covered in water and someone in front of me went into it, lost his hands on his bars, went over the bars, and then I had nowhere to go, so went into the back of him, over my bars. Initially, when I hit the floor, and I think you do this as a rider, you kind of think, am I okay? What have I done? It must have been a split second later that 100-kilo ex-rugby player rode into my back and did all of that damage. So the impact broke 10 ribs and punctured my lung. And initially, I remember thinking or saying, I will never ride a bike again. And I thought I was going to die. It was awful. I remember being in the ambulance. Initially, I was on the ground for an hour because the ambulance took that long to come. And there was injuries everywhere. And because on the face of it, I looked okay, I was the last one to be seen because, some people would hit their head and it looked catastrophic, but actually they were fine. Even so, all of my injuries were internal and I was still conscious. So when I got into the ambulance, I was in a lot of pain. And then I was in intensive care for a couple of nights because I broke two of my ribs in 2 places. And they said if that bit of rib had become kind of dislodged, it would be floating with my internal organs. And that would be really catastrophic, probably wouldn't survive. And then with the punctured lung, you would be in intensive care anyway, because I had a chest drain, because I had a pneumothorax and a hemothorax. So I had fluid in and air out. So I had to have a chest drain. It took ages. I don't know how I did it. It's incredible because I don't think I touched the bike for 6 weeks at least. and then slowly got back on my bike. Mentally I was petrified. I remember having to go down the longest stretch of road that I knew of, where I could see as far into the distance as possible. So I knew I didn't have to brake, or I could see very clearly. I could see every hole on the road, because I was just, really worried. But yeah, it didn't take me long to get back and wanting to race again, even though initially I said I'm never riding a bike again. Even when I had a chest drain, I was begging the physio in the hospital to take me down to the gym in the hospital and let me ride a bike in the hospital, because I think we're not all there, are we, us athletes? But I was so keen to get back on the bike after initially getting over the trauma of the accident. And then I think I raced again, probably about 4 months later. So maybe 16 weeks-ish. But it was the worst pain I've ever felt. I think if you've ever broken ribs, they're so painful. And obviously I'd broken 10, so I had to have an epidural where they, I think, kind of block your upper body in terms of the pain that you're feeling. They give it to mothers when they have a cesarean section, when they cut the baby out. So I had that for a couple of days, and then had to just be on very high painkillers after that.
Just a quick explanation. The human body has 12 pairs of ribs, 24. So if Dani broke 10, roughly we could say she broke half of them. That is actually terrible, but fascinating that you came back from that.
Yeah, so I broke 8 separate ribs, but 2 of them were broken in 2 places. So nearly all of them on one side. But I think I just wasn't done with cycling, and I wanted to ride again. I actually really wanted to be selected for the Rio Olympics on the road. And actually, again, I did everything that I was supposed to do in terms of the British selection. But another rider got selected over me because they could double up in the time trial and the road race. But that doesn't matter in hindsight. I think it's quite good that I've got one Olympic memory, and that's the London Olympics where we won gold. But I love, road racing was something that I did for nearly sort of 5 years after the Olympics, but I guess fully focused for probably 2, sort of 16, 17, 18, where I was riding for Wiggle and then for Wow Deals with Marianne Vos.
Well, and an easier question. As a woman, it requires more planning to become parent, right? So my wife and me, we have 6 children, right? I'm a cyclist, so I was gone a lot. So in all this, my wife is actually the hero, right? Because she had to do a lot of work when I was gone exploring the world. For you as a woman, was it if we allowed to ask, was it a conscious decision to wait for after the career? Because nowadays, the Olympic circle is 4 years. If you have a child within the first year, you could still have a comeback in the next 3 years. Did that ever cross your mind? Or is it, I want to have children when I have time for them and I can stay at home?
It was actually quite different. Even in 2018, in the last sort of 2 or 3 years, it's changed a lot, and we're seeing a lot more athletes or bike riders coming back after motherhood. But it was something that I never wanted to do. For me and my psychology, if I was doing something, I wanted to just do that one thing. And I had to be so selfish as an athlete. And my thought process was, I don't want to go to bed at night, be woken up by a baby, and be annoyed because I've got 4 hours training the next day. I wanted to be woken up by a baby and think, okay, I'll just have to drink more coffee tomorrow and it's fine. I didn't want to feel any sort of, I don't know, almost anger on any child that I was bringing into this world because they were going to have a detrimental effect on my training. I just wanted to be a mum after that and just focus on being the best mum I could be. And that's not taking anything away from these women who are coming back from being a mother or having a child and coming back into the sport. I salute them because I think it's amazing, and I couldn't have done it You know, I just couldn't have been the person that I am. That's why I stopped in 2018, because I felt that I'd achieved everything and more that I ever dreamt of on the bike. And I was 28, nearly 29. I didn't know how long it was going to take for me to have a baby. I hadn't had periods for 10 years. My bone density was low. You know, I was obviously very lean. So I was worried that it was going to take quite a long time as well. I had no idea if my body's going to allow me to have a child. And thankfully it did at the end of 2020. And here we are, 2 kids later.
Wow. Well, I know we're getting towards the end of our time, but I have one last question, because very rarely do we get somebody like you who was an ex-athlete, a commentator, and you also run Rowe and King Coaching with your husband and brother-in-law, Luke, who has a lot of knowledge around training, because he's been with the Sky and Ineos for a very, very long time. So my question is this: with your insider knowledge and experience as a coach, how can you explain, or what do you think is the reason why we have to answer the question all the time, how are these riders going so fast? What do you think, what would be your answer to that?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's the combination of everything that they are exposed to. So the best nutritionists, the best equipment, the best coaches, and the best kind of lifestyle. They are all now, I'm talking to Luke, I know this, they are putting everything into their bike riding. They do not have a life outside of bike riding. They are eat, sleep, breathe in bike riding. They are at altitude when they are not racing. They are eating right all the time. In the off season, they're not putting on 10 kilos anymore. They might put on a couple, but they're not. You know, Luke used to come home, party every night, put on 10 kilos. And even him in the last few years he couldn't do that, because he wouldn't be able to compete in Tour Down Under if he was doing that, or even the classics. So I think it's just that combination of everything. And in terms of training, they're training to the demands of the event. You know, they're at altitude, they know what they have to do. It's very scientific now. So they know exactly what per kilo they're going to have to put out on La Bonnette for how long it's going to take them. And that's what they're training. That's what they're doing. That day in, day out. So their body is used to the demands that the race is going to put on them when they get to that race. So whether it's the classic season that they're targeting, or the Tour de France, or the World Championships, they will work back from that goal, and they'll be training to the demands of that event from when they start, you know, race training in the winter. And that's what it's all about. And that's what we do in our coaching company. Someone comes to us, they tell us what they want to achieve, whether that's a race or just to complete their first 10-mile bike ride. And then we use the time that they've got and train specifically to the demands of whatever their challenge is that they want to achieve.
We so need you back in a podcast. I just have a very quick, easy question. The answer is only one word for all 3 of us. Maybe we start with Dani. If you would be Tadej Pogačar this year, would you pick the Vuelta to win another one, or would you pick to win the Worlds? What would you pick?
Worlds.
Bobby?
Worlds.
Vuelta for me. That would be historic. Nobody ever done that. Thank you for the quick answer.
Well, Dani, we really appreciate you coming on today and spending so much time with us. You're going to be busy, but first and foremost, you get to go and recover and have a little bit of a vacation. So enjoy that as well. And we'll have to get you back on the podcast, because we have so many more little questions that we could talk about for so much longer. So enjoy your vacation. Thank you very much for coming on the Odd Tandem.
Thank you for having me. It's been brilliant fun.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. There'll be loads more content popping up here, including more great interviews with top guests like Dani. Keep dropping your questions for us in the comments. And check our description below to find us on social media and Patreon to support the channel.